the Beats with Jess Bowen and Bowie J.
G'day, it is Bowie Jane with Jess Bowen for Babes Behind the Beats. And today on the show we have Karla Ortiz, who is the CEO and founder of Monarch Entertainment, former Universal Music Group executive, and like a marketing guru.
Hey, that's so sweet. I love that intro. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, we're excited to have you in. As I told you earlier, it's also interesting for artists like Bowie and I to kind of dive into like what you do in the industry, because I mean it's helpful. It's helpful for all artists, and it would be so great to just like see how you got to where you are and like kind of dive into the specifics of what you do. So like I guess just going back to the beginning, like did you go to school for music or for business or what was that?
You know,
process?
I double majored. I went to Cal State Fullerton, and originally I thought I was going to be a publicist. So I got a degree in communications with an emphasis in public relations. Okay. And then I also got a degree in sociology, mainly just because I thought it was interesting, and then later realized it could be a nice safety net in case PR doesn't work out. But I ended up interning early on as a junior in college in music.
Oh, nice. Where at?
With Ryan Seacrest.
Oh my gosh.
Right here in Burbank, actually.
Wow.
No big
on the
deal.
morning show.
Your in first internship with Ryan Seacrest.
I know. I was so fortunate. The team there was just incredible.
Yeah, how did you
His
get
producers. I think I called, I cold called and, just try to find out how to get my resume into the team. And then I want to say that someone, recommended who to contact, and I sent over my resume, and it turned out that one of the main producers is from the same, kind of not small town, but suburb in LA that I grew up in. And so she kind of identified with that and found my story to kind of parallel hers at the time. So she was like, I want to bring this girl in. And it was just kind of a cool, kind of like take you under my wing kind of thing. And ended up going in for the interview and totally hit it off, and ended up landing the internship, which was incredible.
So can you tell us a little bit of what you did with that internship?
Yeah, I mean, this was quite some time ago. Again, they were based here, and Ryan at the time was very, very active on American Idol. Mm-hmm. So I would basically help out with getting his breakfast, egg whites, and a tall black coffee with Splenda. I still remember the order.
So healthy.
Yeah, I was going to say, no wonder he's trim.
Yeah. No, it was very healthy. Wow. And I would, go out and get magazines, because at the time, social media wasn't where it is today.
Right, yeah.
So I would go out and get, like, the, freshest magazines that usually had clippings in them that were, like, from a day ago or, very, very, very recent, of different things that have gone on with celebrities. And so that's how they would actually, fill kind of like the 30-minute news section every half hour about like current events and what was going on
like
in
the
Hollywood.
Latest events that just happened. That makes sense.
And so I would have to like comb through them and then clip out things that I thought Ellen Kay at the time would be interested in talking about. Stuff like that. And then other miscellaneous things that they would need me to do.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was grateful to just be there, you know, and witness the people that would come in, for their interviews with him on the radio show and all of that.
How long did that go for, the internship?
I want to say it was 2 semesters.
Cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so then what do you do after that? Do they offer you a job, or how do you translate it into a paid position?
So at the time, I knew that there wasn't really any opening for a full-time job. They had a pretty, robust team, all of which were thrilled to be there. You could tell that they just loved what they did. And there wasn't going to be much movement. So I think knowing that, I just continued on and tried to seek out another internship, which is how I ended up at Universal. I went to the Career Planning and Placement Center on campus at school. And at the time, you could use their computers to kind of access a portal that would show you what, positions and what internships were available.
Right.
And that's how I stumbled across an internship with Universal before digital was digital, back when it was called New Media. And yeah, back when, it was a department called NetReach where they would post up 50 students in a room, and they would essentially communicate to fans through what we once knew as message boards back in the day.
Right.
Before, again, social media was social media. So message boards, and I think MySpace as well at the time.
Yeah.
And so we, would sort of compete. It was kind of this competitive program where one student, based on their overall performance, attendance, and I think ability to kind of catch on to what they were doing and how to do it, would win intern of the semester, and that intern would then get a part-time job in the department.
Oh, gosh.
Cool.
And I ended up winning intern of the semester, which was awesome.
Oh, my
Nice.
God.
Yeah, and
Big deal.
it was really, really cool. And
Yeah.
the two main projects that I worked on as an intern there were Amy Grant.
Oh, nice.
And another project that was actually not even music related, because they were dabbling in, some like brand partnerships as well. And so they had partnered with Nissan on a new vehicle that they were launching, but they were trying to target a younger demographic through the same means. And so I would help with communicating about the new truck or whatever they were launching, and, some of the cool widgets that they had out, for young adults to be able to like play with online and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, so what would a campaign look like for, so would say that was mostly marketing? Or
It was
a bit of everything?
I would say that job was really more kind of like a, fan engagement, fan base and the fan community, communication with them, informing them about, releases if she was on tour, information that was pertinent to the artist and, things that she was bringing to market, essentially.
So essentially the things like you said that these days, like we would use social media for, like, hey, I'm about to go on tour. These are the cities I'm going to. At the time, you needed someone who did that for you, because how else would other people, it would probably a lot of like email lists and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, it was like the only place that fans really lived online at the time. And so now you would post to Instagram, but back then you'd have to go into, your favorite artist message board to know, like, is there merch, or are they, what's the first show date, or, like, where are they going to be in the US or Europe, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What were you doing on the Nissan side of it? How did you work with Nissan in that aspect? Was that also like getting like
so it was basically message boards as well. And at the time it was kind of like I'm trying to compare it to what we would look at today, maybe kind of like Reddit, where you go into like forums, where people are chatting. And so there were a lot of forums about cars and about trucks and stuff like that. And so, that's where I had to get creative. I had to figure out where would, these kind of like fans or audiences, not fans obviously on the non-music side, but these audiences live online, and where are they having conversations, and who's going to be interested in playing with a widget to customize their Nissan. And how do I get them interested in that? And so that was kind of, what went into all that.
That's so interesting. Like all these jobs that I would never know.
No,
existed. You know what
I know.
mean? Of like, I did not know that was even like possible.
Yeah. And that's all from an internship and then moving through the...
Yeah, so I landed intern of the semester, and that got me a part-time job with the department. And then about a month or two later, the Latin department approached me about an opportunity with them that was going to pay me a little bit more. So I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. And I am Latin. So I think the notion of being able to do something that, was sort of more tied to my roots on the music side was exciting. And plus the language and just that familiarity. So I ended up, taking that opportunity. And I remember it was, at a time when Universal was working on developing the whole reggaeton movement and signing, literally in the midst of signing Daddy Yankee and Don Omar and all of those artists, and I'm half Puerto Rican.
Oh.
So one of the interview questions for that job was, what's the next genre in Latin music? And I just so happened to know, because I had just recently studied over the summer in Puerto Rico, and so, at the university there, the conversation was the hot topic about, reggaeton, and on the radio, which was my alarm to get to class, was, Daddy Yankee and Don Omar and all these songs that later would become massive,
huge, absolutely
massive
huge.
hits in the US. So it was just like timing and, the cultural tie, and the fact that they knew that they were launching this genre, and knowing that they needed someone who understood what that meant and how that kind of worked culturally.
Right.
It just so happened I happened to be the right fit.
So what was the role then exactly?
That role, it was essentially an assistant to their distribution marketing department. And so their distribution marketing department would liaise with all of the Latin labels
Right.
that were funneled through their distribution portal, essentially, or their department. And they were responsible with communicating to, at the time, all of the brick and mortars. So, they were, constantly pitching the new releases
into the stores.
Tower Records, Virgin
Mhm.
Records,
Yeah.
Sam Goody, all of the Target, Walmart, all
Best
the
Buy, all that
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
And then at the time there were also a ton of independent Latin, like mom and pop music shops throughout the country and in Puerto Rico. So that became that list became my focus. And so I would spend, multiple days calling each and every one of those stores to let them know about our priority releases, which were dictated by the executives in that department, and let them know, what POP, which is promotional material, we had available to send them, so that they would just know what was available and kind of request, what they needed. And then I would make sure to get that shipped out to them.
Wow.
So essentially, communicating on kind of more the sales side, but providing them with the tools to market the releases in store.
Wow. And so where did that lead for you career-wise?
Oh my goodness. So I jumped around at Universal over the course of 11 years.
Oh, wow.
I ended up, moving around to support national marketing directors for Interscope Geffen as well as Island Def Jam, which is where I initially, got to work with, Rihanna and early Kanye and
Wow.
Jay-Z and Mariah Carey and Nelly Furtado. There were so many incredible projects.
Just some small names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What exactly were you doing, like, within that role?
I was assisting the two national marketing directors as part of Universal's distribution. And so they would liaise directly with the labels, being Interscope Geffen and then Island Def Jam, and they would dictate to us what the priorities were, which were these releases. And we had field reps because we still had brick and mortar stores. So we would have field reps set up throughout the country, at the time called ADRs, which were artist development reps, FMRs, which were field marketing reps. They were like reps at different levels that had different levels of responsibility on the ground. And they were assigned to territories. And so they would be responsible for not only going in to do what we would call store checks, but they would also activate in-store signings or performances or local events like, your local pop-up, Mariah Carey night at X location, or, private listening parties and things like that. Lifestyle activations, like if it made sense to do something at a chain of hair salons or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I would support the directors who would essentially, assign them their priorities. And then I would work with the reps to provide them with, tools and resources that were coming from the labels, as well as gathering together reports, to report back to the label everything that we were doing on the ground across the country.
It's a big operation.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
There's
it was
so
a lot.
many people involved.
So many people.
And so now you're the CEO and founder of Monarch. What do you do there? Do you catering for, like, are you doing a specialized kind of a role for the artist, or what exactly is it?
We provide, artist and label services as well as digital marketing support to artists at pretty much every level, whether you're just starting out or you're mid-tier or you're what we would call a frontline artist, or even a legacy artist. I still work with David Foster, for example. It just depends on the needs of each client, and we kind of cater our services according to how we can best plug in, to support the goals that they have. But
For marketing.
For marketing,
Yeah.
for marketing and advertising,
Yeah.
as well as what we call, DSP relations, which is digital service providers, which is Apple Music and Spotify and all of that. Exactly. But my journey here, just to like kind of connect the dots really quick, I spent 11 years at Universal, and then I left to work for a brand for a short stint where I got to really, integrate into influencer marketing and more of like global social media. And then from there, I ended up coming back to music, heading up marketing for an indie distributor called Vidya, which a lot of people are now becoming aware of through a recent acquisition with a company called Gamma that has ties to Apple. And there I actually started their artist marketing department because they didn't have one at the time. And when I joined them back in 2018. And after doing that for a few years, I realized I can do this on my own, and I would, really love to be able to, select artists and artist teams that I really believe in and I want to empower and that kind of thing. So when the pandemic hit, with the surge in digital marketing and the needs of that, because everyone was stuck at home, I felt like it was the perfect time to, branch out of corporate, start my own thing, and work with folks that have distribution anywhere. I don't have to be just, dedicated to one in particular. And that was kind of the fun in that for me.
Yeah. So say you've got a band, a mid-tier sort of band. They come to you, and what are they mostly asking for? Like, what service are they asking you for, and how do you do it?
That's a great question. There's so many different needs that come from, different mid-tier bands. But I would say, it's typically going to be wanting to help with pitching their releases for editorial placement and consideration, helping give them guidance on, their release strategy and the timeline. What content are they going to need to support that release?
For socials and that kind of stuff.
For socials, exactly. And even, their video strategy. Are you going to have a Vivo channel? Are you going to have a Premiere? Are we going to secure a Premiere partner through a publicist? Like, I pretty much help them with, kind of ideating all of that and identifying what makes sense and what would be a good fit. And then on the content side, we've recently gotten a little bit more into, helping out with actually capturing content and editing it for them, for social media so that they can keep up with the algorithm and all that stuff.
Yeah, because that's the hardest bit, isn't it? Like, you'd find that with your band. Like
And do you feel like because of your background of like having done all this marketing and all this stuff before, that you understand what like the algorithm looks for as far as like TikTok and Instagram and all that?
Yeah, it's constantly changing and they're constantly updating them. But the great thing is, maintaining the relationships with the folks at each of these outlets is really what helps keep us informed. So, for example,
so they tell you.
I mean, they can't give away everything, but for example, at TikTok, I've worked on multiple releases that have had viral success. I've been able to kind of witness what that looks like, how it happens, and really what has to happen once that song or sound takes off. But through that, communication with them directly, I'm able to get a sense for, what they're looking for, who do they consider successful on the platform, what are some of the trends that are happening. I get weekly emails about trends so that I can share that with our clients.
That's crucial.
Things like that. No, it's super important because if you don't know, like that it's Pride Month and that they not only have a customized playlist, dedicated on the sound page, but they're also going to be highlighting content, targeted around certain hashtags.
Yeah.
Right.
You wouldn't know to participate.
No.
Right.
I mean, it's just like you really need an expert like yourself.
And like you said, you really have those relationships with them because you've been probably working with a lot of these people throughout your whole career, right?
Yes, that's the interesting thing. And, like we were talking about earlier, the community is so small. A lot of these folks have moved around, from one company to another.
Yeah.
Like the head of indie music at TikTok used to work for a DSP. And, it's like everyone just kind of shifts around. Before that, years ago, she worked at a label. So she understands this side of it as well, which is so helpful.
Yeah.
And also, she just knows, and a lot of these folks just know like what to ask for and kind of help guide and shape how we feed them information so it's helpful for them as well.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the difference. If you want to just put music out there and have it, get featured, you just don't know how to package it in a way that's going to be interesting to them and also digestible and also turnkey so that they can plug it into whatever opportunity may be, on the table.
Oh
That's so interesting and so just crucial. To have as a part of your team. You know what I mean?
And do you, sorry.
Oh, you can keep asking.
Do you deal with really small artists? Like you
Mhm.
have a whole range of options for people who might want to use your services?
Yeah, something that I recently got into is actually teaching digital distribution at the Los Angeles College of Music.
Ah,
And
I was just going to
so
ask about that.
in doing that, it's really helped me realize that, a lot of artists, especially who are just starting out, it's not so much about helping them, become a sensation overnight, because anyone in this business that's been doing it for a while knows that you really have to put in the sweat equity to be successful. And not everything is going to work. There's no perfect formula. If there was, we'd all be using the same formula. But it's really a matter of education. And so working with an artist who's even just thinking about starting out and being able to explain to them the business side of how it works and how to utilize the platforms. I mean, have you, signed up for if you've released music, who's distributing, for you and why? Have you claimed your Spotify for Artist profile, your Amazon Music profile, your Pandora profile? I mean, there's so many tools and resources within each, and there's, a certain way to properly outfit your profile and your representation on each, but not everyone always knows that that's even a thing or how to do it. So that's a big part of what we do with, I would say like artists that are just kind of getting started and, getting into it.
I'd had a question about, I think you've worked a little bit with VerseWire, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
What's that like? And who did you work with them like on? Like what certain projects, I guess?
Yeah, they're fantastic to work with.
Yeah.
It's such a smart team, and it's headed up by Sherry, and she's like running the business of it, and then it's Nick, who's an incredible manager who's been in the business for a long time as well, and we've been working on Beauty School Dropout, and that's something we've been a part of for about a year now.
Wow.
And it's incredible. We were talking this week that when they first signed Beauty School, they were roughly streaming around, I think their total streams across the board were like 4 million. And as of this week, they're at over 30 million.
wow.
Yeah.
On DSPs?
On DSPs.
And what was the change in strategy for them?
I would say, getting signed and then, putting a complete team together. And that's the other thing that I love about working with them. It's like we have all the proper like tools and resources that an artist or a band really needs to get off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
From a solid manager, solid business on the label side, a radio team, a publicist.
You have all of that, or they have that?
They have that. And so
yeah.
we plug in on the marketing side. So
I
we
see.
serve as like their marketing arm.
Right.
And yeah, it's been incredible just because we feel well equipped, and so then it helps us do our job, because if we're going to be pitching a new project or really trying to help get DSPs acquainted with an artist that they don't know too well, it's helpful to have all of these tools to be able to say, we're activating radio, we've got a premiere with the BBC, we've got publicity happening. I mean, all the tools and all the highlights that really help move a project forward.
Actually, I've got a question about radio pluggers. What's your view on? I mean, it was obviously very important back in the day. Is it as important these days to get your music heard?
It's a tricky thing, and it's tricky because radio is still in existence. There's still a huge audience that listens to terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of kind of validity and credibility that goes into artists that get played on the radio. So I think it still matters and it's still important. The challenge about radio is that it's expensive.
Yeah.
To hire a promotions expert or a team and trying to plug into that whole system is just it's an expensive experience, and it can take a lot of time as well. But there are other ways to get exposure, and there are other ways to get discovered. It's just, I would say, an additional tool in, the overall toolbox that we have in the space.
Oh, what about Spotify playlists? That's more important, right? Or not necessarily?
Playlisting is important. It also plays a role, but I always tell artists, you don't want to make getting, playlisting your only marketing plan. because it's not going to sustain, your career or the longevity of whatever song gets playlisted. You really have to activate other levers so that you have widespread success. And at the same time, playlisting is only going to work if you're driving attention and awareness to it. So it's like,
Yeah, true.
There's like layers to the whole kind of ecosystem. If you get
so annoying.
because if you get playlisted and you have a high skip rate, or nobody knows to come in and listen, and so you're not really getting many listens, they're going to remove you pretty quickly. You're not going to last on the playlist for long.
Yeah.
So it's like I always say, even if you do get playlisting, you've got to run advertising. You want to make sure you have a visual out there so that if people are searching, they have something to pair with the music.
Yeah. Well, and TikTok is such a huge thing that plays into radio these days now too. It's like, oh, if it's going viral on TikTok, all of a sudden that plays into getting radio play or playlisting as well, right? Like that's a huge part of it now.
Yeah, TikTok has been really notorious lately for helping drive pre-saves. They've been really successful with that, which has been, I think, kind of a blessing, because I feel like pre-saves were always a really challenging thing to make successful.
Yeah, for sure.
But for certain artists that do TikTok well and that really get aggressive with their pre-release campaigns, they can have a lot of success on TikTok with that. And of course, post-release, if the song goes viral and people use the sound like crazy, that also helps spike streams like crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty dramatic. I've seen like an increase of like 20,000%. It's something
it's
insane.
Wild. It's pretty wild once something goes viral on TikTok.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, anyways, all of this information is so interesting.
It's mind-blowing.
It's honestly, it's very important if you want to be in this industry, and also if you want to get into your business. It's cool to kind of like hear how you got to be where you were at, because again, I didn't know jobs like this. A lot of people wouldn't know that this job maybe exists or how to get into it,
Yeah.
So it's very cool. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And for everyone who's listening, do you want to give maybe your social media or website that everyone could check out so that they can follow you?
Absolutely. They can check out our website. It's monarchentertainment.co. We also have an active Instagram account, which is Monarch with the K, MONARKENT. And you can also find me on Instagram at Miss K Ortiz.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Karla, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening to Babes Behind the Beats with Jess Bowen and Bowie Jane. Head over to our Instagram, Babes Behind the Beats, and our TikTok, and send us a message over there on who you'd like on the show next.